tonight.
Hello, everybody. Bernadette, Clark, and I are out here in the Trial Gardens, which have been here for quite some time at the Arboretum, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that later on. But Bernadette and I are going to take you through a little bit of the history of the gardens and what's here, what type of plants we grow here and how we grow them, and some of the highlights of the garden this year. So Bernadette, like I said, you and I have been around here a little bit for a little while now. Me, not quite so long as you, but you know the history much more than me. What can you tell me about some of the history here of the Arboretum, or the Trial Gardens here at the Arboretum, and before in reality?
Okay, the bedding plant trials, to our best knowledge, started in the 60s with Professor Dr. Joe Love. They were first conducted, I'd say maybe about 40 years up in where we have the ellipse now in the Arboretum. 2010 is when they were transitioned here to the back of the Arboretum. And as you can see, it's a lovely view, much prettier presentation of the plant material on this sloping landscape, as opposed to before on the Great Lawn, it was just a big block. But but what we do, our mission hasn't changed from when it started to where we are now. When we first started, it was primarily being used by landscape companies, nurserymen, greenhouse growers, and the occasional homeowner that came through. And over time, we've expanded that. The classes use it, whether it's at NC State, Meredith, Wake Tech uses it as a resource for their students. We have it available for homeowners, as we said earlier, for all of the industry, the green industry professionals. It's just a great resource for people. And with that, I probably should just start explaining. Okay, you go.
No, I was just going to ask you, actually. Now, how do the plants come in here? How do you get them? How do the companies send them to us?
Okay, we are what they call a fee-for-use trial site, which means the company has to pay us to trial their plant material. They can send the material, they dictate how and what I receive. So they will send it either as a seed material or they'll send it as vegetative material, which are those little plugs, and then you just you plot them up, finish them out. They also get to tell me, do they want these to be grown out in full sun, like behind us, or do they want it in the shade? And we do have one shade structure on the far side of the property we'll show you in a few minutes. And in there, we could, or so if you want to.
From there, how do they go about being presented, I guess you say? Okay,
they have to tell me.
Yeah.
And then they also have the choice of either putting the plant material in a hanging basket, like we have the begonia here, so they can opt to put it in a hanging basket. We can do it in a container if they want it in a container, as well as putting it in the ground. They call that in a bed or in the ground. And some of the companies opt for a combination of that. Sometimes they want one in the bed and one in a hanging basket or a container. So they get to drive that. They tell me how they want it and where they want it done. Did that answer?
Yeah, I think that did.
Okay.
I think that might help some people out in understanding things.
Well, I will, one other thing. Anything that's put in the ground has 7 across. So when you come out and look, you'll see.
7 across.
Yeah, it started out with 7 across. Some may have died, so it may be fewer than that, but they start out with 7 across. Our hanging baskets, it's only one plant that's put into our 10-inch basket. So one plant in the 10-inch baskets, we do 3 baskets. With our containers, it's the same thing. 1 plant per container and 3 of those.
So what types of plants do we actually present here?
Well, we have you're talking about the vegetables? Or?
I mean, that's one aspect. Then there's a couple other types of plants that we have here now. Not just the annuals, but we have
perennials. Oh, the perennials. Yeah. We also do we do perennial trials, and those are at the back portion of the trial field here.
So, yeah, we're doing vegetables now, a few of.
Right. Well, we participate in the All-America Selection Trial Program, which is a national program that started in the 1930s. And when the All-America Selection started, the only way people got plant material was through seeds. But over the years, they've evolved, and they now have 3 different areas that you can judge plant material. You can either do it through seed. We do edibles with them. So seeded ornamentals, they do vegetables, and they also do vegetative cuttings for ornamentals. We don't participate in that segment, but we do within the edibles, we do the containerized vegetables, and we do the seeded in container and also in ground. We just don't have enough room to do all of the trials with them. So we sort of pick and choose what works best with our space.
How big are we, speaking of that?
I believe the gardens, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, I think you're on with us. I think it's just under 2 acres maybe that this encompasses. That would be my guess. But with that said, we take data out here because we are an educational institution or associated with it, and we do like data. So I take data weekly. All the information is compiled at the end of the season into a report. So if anybody's interested in looking at past reports, you can go to the J.C. Raulston website, go to across the top on the menus to the publications, go down on the publication list to the trial report. They also have one called the annual report. That's not what you're looking for. That's all numbers. So if you want to do the numbers, go to the numbers. But if you want the plant material, go to the trial report and click on that. And you can find a wealth of information of past performances out here. And starting this year, we also put the list of plant material that are currently in the gardens. So you can easily click on that. You don't have to physically come out. You can look at that and see, make your wish list from that and come out and see how they're doing.
Okay, so you've mentioned that we have a couple different types of things in our containers. So did you want to show, and illustrate how our signage works, things like that?
Absolutely. As I said, we're into education. We do like that. And I love my signs. I get teased about them because when we first plant, it looks like a mouse cemetery apparently out here to some people because we have small plants and big labels, but they are important. The first part of the label tells you the location. We do it alphabetically, starting with the very first bed will be A, B, C, and so forth. The next is a number, so within that bed, it tells you the location. So you just have to look at the top line. Then if you look at the next line, it tells you the marketed name of it. In this case, it's not here. Anyway, so that's the marketed name. The next is the common name. It's an ornamental pepper. The next is the scientific name. Sorry, let me turn it so you can see it. And the bottom lists who put it into the trials. It's not the only source for this plant material, but it is who paid to put it into the trials. But with that said, this one shows you that it says All-America Selection. All-America Selection also sends these labels, so you'll see these maybe a little bit easier, spot them a little bit quicker when you're looking across the field. And these just also recognize the All-America Selection plant, and it tells you some other little bits of information on there. But these are nice to identify past winners. You'll see in the lower right-hand corner, this one says AAS winner. They also have, and I'm sorry, Alexander, I'm going to put this down and grab another one. You'll see on this other one, it also says winner, but underneath it, it says regional. So they are now separating out plant material because sometimes we have things that do well here in the Southeast that don't survive the Northwest.
And vice versa.
And vice versa. Anyway, so that's a nice thing. You can also look for that because the regional tells you that it really should do well for us here in this area.
So that's great. So we have just a couple examples of some of the ones that we have in the containers and in the baskets. So here, this year we've had a ton of different begonias, not just in the baskets, but in the ground as well. But this is one, I don't even know, what is this one?
Is it big?
This is Viking Explorer Red. Does that sound right?
Yep. Or it's maybe XL. No, you're right. There's a Viking XL.
So this is kind of going, I think, on the lines of kind of like the angel wings were not angel wings, dragon wings.
No, these look like angel wings to me.
So, but anyways, the dragon wing type begonias that you were seeing, they're getting some other companies coming up with their own style of those. And we also have some of the vegetables that you were mentioning. Down here we have one of the jalapenos, and I don't know which one it is again, but we're going to look here. It looks like Primero red. So is this one
This is
a standard?
That's a standard, and that's
So-
going to be compared against one of their numbered varieties. So it's the other, what it's being compared to isn't even available on the market. It's still in the trialing process.
Stage, and we have that actually up here, and we've just noticed this one is actually getting, the fruit have changed. Just
Turn it around so they can see
the
this.
last day or so.
Yesterday when I looked at there was no color in that, none. And with this heat, you can see that it is really bringing a lot of things on,
And I think
maturing.
2 out of the 3 plants have actually colored up in the last 2 days, while the other ones a couple weeks. I mean, they're not showing any color yet. So there is some variation we're seeing, and so that'll be something that they take into account as
Right.
you do your ratings. And maybe somewhere else in the country they'll have slightly different ratings, but you never know.
Right. Right.
Another plant we have here is one of the calibrachoas, which there's so many of these that are available. You'll often hear them called million bells because those are the original. The original series was Million Bells. So,
Right.
But this is calibrachoa, and this is Super Bell's Prism Pink, which I'm really liking this one. This is when it's been really vigorous in our containers again, and it's a color changing one. So they start out
Yellow.
just a creamy yellow with a few flecks of pink, and then they fade to pink, and it intensifies as the flower ages.
Well, the pink lemonade, the
Yes.
one that we were just looking at, you and I were speaking before this started
One
up.
of the original ones was Million Bells Terracotta. That was 20-some years.
And all of us drooled over that when it first came out.
It was one that changed colors, and I remember that so well.
But that's why I think the pink lemonade is one of my favorites, just
Yes.
because it's almost like you get a 2 for
And I
1.
haven't seen that characteristic for several years in any of the ones that have been
They don't
out,
seem to
so-
be promoting it anyway.
I'm really liking that. And then the third one here is an All-America selection, actually. I believe the Verbena Bonariensis.
Benedict.
So this is an improvement over your traditional Verbena Bonariensis. How are we sounding right now? We have a helicopter one right over top of us. But it's compact. It's only about 2 feet tall. Well, normal Verbena Bonariensis will easily get 4, sometimes 5 feet tall in our climate here.
Quite big.
And it's much denser, might be easier to use in a landscape than the traditional ones. And I believe the birds love the seeds on this just as much as they love the traditional tall growing ones. So again, great for a smaller landscape, and it flowers the entire summer. So those are just a few here that we have to highlight, but just on the container plants we have here. So.
And one other thing that I know we're trying to keep our segment on time. So there's just a few things that I wanted to mention before we start asking about questions. Behind me, and Alexander, I don't know if you can pan in, the first first 6 rows, we have they're mixtures. They're called mixed masters plantings. They have in a single cell, there are 3 different cuttings. So like the first row, you see the calibrachoa, there are multiple colors of calibrachoa in there. The next one was just the impatiens, and you can see the red and the white. If you go over to the 4th bed or the 4th lane, it has actually mixed species within that one plug. We have the Kufia, we've got Lantana, and we have the Angelonia. And what the companies are doing, well, like I said, this is called a mixed master. There are other companies that call it other things, like there's a quick combo, that kind of thing. What they're doing is trying to make this plant foolproof for somebody new to gardening, making it easy that lines up the...
You go away for a weekend and you're a new gardener and you don't have anybody to water your stuff, and one of the plants isn't quite so... I didn't intentionally mute it, but let's see, maybe. I have a red light.
How about if I talk while he's doing that then? Okay, well anyway, so they're just trying to make it a little bit more foolproof and
There we go.
more for new gardeners to have success with their foray into the plant world. Anyway, but those are something interesting to look at. You may ask me, why are they in the ground? Well, it goes back to when we ask the seed companies or these companies that are participating, where do they want it? If they don't tell me, by default, it goes in the ground. So that's why I think these look fine here, but I think they would look better probably in a container.
Especially with the
Mixed species.
The mixed species ones. That's what I was kind of saying when I didn't realize I was muted. That one might do better than the others. Sometimes in an area, I mean, early on in the season, one plant might look good, and then the others fill in and kind of take their place. So
you see that with the coleus.
With the coleus, but I mean, there's different sizes in the coleus, which is nice too. So it gives you, there's the spreading ones, and then there's the upright ones, all in the same plug, which gives you, you don't get ugly bare knees that way. So, and other times it's the structure within the container that's going to vary. So.
Right. And we also were talking about behind even these, we had the New Guineas.
Yes.
And it's the first time that we've ever had this long of or this many of the plants in an outdoor trial, in the sun trials.
We've always been putting them in the shade.
In the shade, yes. So as you can see, there is some variation between the different series there.
If you come out, you can clearly see it. When you walk the rows, there's two different main series, and one is distinctly, to me, was much better flower coverage than the other. I don't remember which one's offhand, but come on out here if you have a few minutes someday, and that would be great.
But with that comment, I still don't want to disqualify the one that isn't as floriferous, because you got to wait and see. We're still not even to the halfway point of the season. So maybe this other one is going to just come on gangbusters and carry you the rest of the season. So don't discount something early. You gotta
come out multiple times.
Yeah, multiple times and look at things. That's the best way. I tell people, come out first thing, make a list of what all you think catches your eye, you're interested in. Come out again later with that same list, see if it's still alive, how it's doing. Are you still interested in it? And then come at the very end. Yeah. And that's only if you want to have something all season. Some people, you may have a wedding in your backyard. You want it to look gorgeous, the early part of the season. So that's what you need to look for, is what was looking really good.
If the early part of the season, you don't want vinca.
No,
it doesn't go until it's hot. They want it really hot.
Or the lantanas, they like it when it's hot and humid. But anyway,
do we have any questions from online?
No questions. Okay. Well,
so we have one of our helpers here has a question for us.
So you see lots of different plants, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. When you're looking for a plant for your own garden, what is your criteria? What are you looking for in a plant?
Tim, you go first.
I'm a little different, because I actually work, when I'm not at work, I have an apartment. I don't have a yard per se, but I have some planter boxes. I like things that have maybe some foliar interest. It can flower off and on. I want some flowers, but it doesn't have to be constantly in flower. It's blazing hot where my planter boxes are in the afternoon. So I choose plants that are, can take the heat, because I found my first year there, I killed all kinds of things. Now I'm getting things growing, and I have a menagerie of things in my planter boxes that I found that do well. And something we don't have this year in the beds are geraniums. Actually have done very well in my planters. I was able to winter them over with just minimal, bringing them into my apartment for like 2 weeks. I set them back out, and they came through the winter, and they're flowering. So I look for things that can take an occasional drying out, can take heat, and I have some other things that I'm just growing for their foliage, more or less, that give me color and texture whenever the other stuff is not at peak. So I'm probably a little different than the average person in that way. I'm not picky. I am picky, that is, but in different ways. That is, I don't have to have flowers. I want structure.
I don't think you're that picky, because I can say a lot of that is what I'm looking for, but I like a lot of when you're talking about the textures, I look for the grasses or the grass-like things. Yeah. And this year in the trials, we have something called Curly Whirly. It's a juncus, I believe.
Yes.
And
it's way down there. You can't see it.
It's
right next to the tomatoes that are about ready to eat it. But
they're only up about like this, but they're the corkscrew type of foliage.
Yep.
And so they're to me, I like a little bit of oddball stuff in my containers, but I also have a dilemma at my house, because for 30 plus years, I gardened in the shade, and just at the beginning of COVID, we had to cut down a huge oak that was adjoining property to my neighbor, because it was leaning towards their house. And now I'm in full sun. So I'm like all of y'all, I'm learning trial and error. Things that catch my attention, I'm having to learn the sun, whereas I was doing the shade for so long. But I also like things with fragrance.
Yes, fragrance
And
is great.
Another thing you and I talked about. Oh,
Basil.
you can, okay. You can tell me about basil.
I love basil, which
Yes.
I don't know. Do we actually have any in the trials this year? per
No,
se?
well, I have one in a pot up
But those
there,
are
but
volunteers, actually. But yeah,
but nothing
basil
trialed.
is something I could care less if it's in flower or even an interesting one, as long as I love to not even as we're getting the sign for eating. I don't necessarily eat it. I mean, I will eat it, but just
I love
to
it.
brush it, I mean, the sense. It's totally it's a totally different aspect to your garden. You don't necessarily have to see it for its color or its taste. It's just that we actually we stick a few cuttings in the winter and have it in the greenhouse just to brush it and
smell it,
to smell it through the winter and get us through those hard days.
Well, it's like
Same way in the
rosemary.
summer. Yes.
Rosemary.
Exactly.
You can't go by it without raking it with your hand and then sniffing, you know.
But what were you going to say aside from before that? Because
something else earlier this summer you and I talked about. We have a variety out here of the Nemesia.
Okay,
that's the mulberry. I think it was mulberry.
Yeah.
But that Nemesia, you're going to have to get down on your hands and knees because you're going to, and it's worth it because even I did it to smell the flowers.
Fragrance.
It's got a really nice light fragrance. So there again, that if you had it in one of your higher
beds,
containers or whatever, and you're sitting in a chair on the patio, you would be able to easily smell it. But so I like something that makes, you know, you got to work a little bit. You get lots of senses going on.
Fragrance is so, I guess, connected with memory and things. So it's a nice baby. Is it a baby powdery fragrance? If I remember right, it's a soft.
It was light. It just was a light
fragrance. It's not overwhelming. But
it was just
it's
real
something
pleasant.
you remember. It's not like a gardenia that you almost have to get in small doses or you'll be overwhelmed.
Right.
So.
Well, there are two other real quick things then that we'll mention. When you come out, so I hope you do come out, you will see that we have caladiums out here. The company out of Florida that sent them specifically asked for one of their varieties to be put out into the sun. The other four are in the shade. So when you come out, cruise through under the shade, you'll see those four, but you will also, when you're walking the gardens, you'll see that we have a sun caladium. You can put caladiums out in the sun. In Florida, all the breeding work that's done down there, they have them out in the full sun, full Florida sun. And so we also have them as end caps out here as well. So that way you can see, because I love caladiums. There again, it's that foliage texture and the colors. They've got all the different patterns and colors that you can have. So I was going to say, you will see that. And then one of my favorite things out here this year happens to be something that is so old. It's one of the everlastings. It's the bracthanthum that's down there. It's the very end yellow, and it's a straw flower. So those of you that are old like me know that you touch the flower and you'll hear it crinkle. It sounds like it's already been dried. And used to use it back in the 70s and 80s, probably in all the potpourris and things like that in the house. I love it. And there again,
I used to grow them actually, and they were these real tall, gangly things. Now they've gotten them into
everything else.
Yeah, they're much more compact and easier to grow in the landscape. And I think another name for them is Xerantha. I think is a new name I've seen. So Xerantha, so dry flower. So dry flower. So
we got some people online that are asking questions about how is the soil prepared and do we use pesticides out here?
Okay, the last question's the easiest. No.
Should we repeat that? Or
I'm sorry. The question was, do we use pesticide?
I'm mic'd.
Oh, you're mic'd? Okay. Not accustomed to that yet. So, okay. So you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Do we use pesticides out here? No, we do not, because most homeowners don't, and we're trying to give an evaluation that is akin to something that a homeowner would do. The other thing was about the bed prep. For the ones in the containers, obviously, they get a different treatment. We just put bagged soil in those, put them on top of the beds. The beds themselves out here, you'll see, all that we do here is they get tilled up prior to planting. So that's I call it fluffing the soil. It fluffs the soil. We come through and we use a template that punches the holes so we have the spacing and everything. And then I have a dedicated, faithful group of volunteers that come out year after year that help me plant these. And when you do your shot of the whole garden, I want people to know that it all gets planted in one day. And that's because we have great help.
15 to 20 volunteers typically.
Yep, and it has to be highly organized to be able to get it in place and done. But it's all done by many hands. And so we'll plant them, and then after that, what I do is we water everything in because you want to make sure the roots all have good contact with the soil. And within the next handful of days, I come out with a dosatron, which is a proportioner that suctions a certain amount of fertilizer through the line. We hand water every plant out here 1 or 2 times to get them nicely settled in.
Yeah, another thing we also do is we use our leaf mulch here that we have.
Oh, year after year.
We mulch them, try to get it almost done in we've done it the last couple years, I think, in the same day.
Or finish
within the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So that also helps to get them established as well. So, and that adds to our soil over time.
Right, because they started out as pretty much the native soil, and then we did add a little bit of, I guess it was dirt. It wasn't soil, it was dirt to these first few beds. And the best thing really is, as Tim said, with the year after year of putting the leaf mulch, because we're putting 2 to 3 inches of soil of leaf mulch on there. It gets tilled in, any of the dead plant material, because in the fall, as the frost comes in, it takes out things. We leave things in place, and all that stuff eventually rots into the ground. So thank you for asking, but yes, that's what we do.
Any other questions?
There was one question they asked, at the end of the trials, do the growers take back the plants, donate the perennials to the Arboretum, or is the compost pile their final destination?
As I just told you, I said at the end, as things die down, a lot of stuff, if we get it early in the season, if it dies, it goes to the compost pile. The companies don't ask for it back. They have told me that any of the extras that they send me, I can give, and we use them various places here around
the front of the Arboretum. I have several things in it for the
just
sign.
To add spots of color in places that could use it. So that's what we do with them.
For sure. And that looks like that's all the questions that we've got in the chat.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And hope to see you out here. And if you do come out, please say hello.
Come out on a cool morning, not a hot afternoon.
Thank you, everybody.